In a small and picturesque town called Harmony, there lived a young boy named Michael. At 15 years old, Michael was a boy full of dreams and aspirations. He had skin as dark as the deepest night and large, bright eyes that reflected the kindness and curiosity he carried in his heart. Although Harmony was a peaceful place, not all of its inhabitants shared the same open-minded and tolerant mentality. Michael lived with his mother, a strong and hard-working woman who had raised him alone. From a young age, she had taught him the importance of education, respect, and kindness. "Always remember, Michael," she would often say, "your worth is not defined by the color of your skin, but by the greatness of your heart." One Friday morning, as the sun began to rise on the horizon, Michael decided to leave early for school. That day, however, he had a special purpose in mind. He had been saving for weeks to buy a sweet bread from the town's famous bakery, a place all the kids adored for its homemade pastries. But for Michael, that sweet bread represented more than just a treat. It was a small luxury he allowed himself from time to time, as a reward for his achievements in school. Upon arriving at the bakery, a small bell rang as he opened the door, announcing his arrival. The baker, a robust man with a warm smile named Mr. Charles, greeted him from behind the counter. "Good morning, Michael. What brings you here so early?" Mr. Charles asked as he finished placing the freshly baked bread in the display case. "Good morning, Mr. Charles. I'd like a sweet bread, please," Michael replied, with his usual politeness. As Mr. Charles prepared to serve him, the bakery door opened again, and in walked an elderly woman. It was Mary, a woman in her 60s, with white hair tied up in a bun and a stern expression on her face. Mary was known in the town for her strong opinions and, unfortunately, for her prejudices. She had lived her entire life in Harmony, but time had made her more rigid and distrustful of those she considered different. Upon seeing Michael in the bakery, Mary frowned and looked at him with disdain. The townspeople knew that look. It was the same one Mary reserved for those who didn't fit her expectations. Michael, who was accustomed to the looks and malicious comments, tried to ignore her, focusing on his purchase. But Mary was not willing to stay silent. She approached the counter and, without waiting for her turn, spoke to the baker loudly. "Mr. Charles, I don't understand why you allow people like him to come to your bakery. This place should be for decent folks." Mary's comment fell like a stone on Michael's heart. Although he had faced racism before, Mary's words were especially hurtful because they came from an older person, someone he would have respected in a different context. The baker, who had always treated Michael with kindness, was momentarily silent, shocked by Mary's rudeness. Michael took a deep breath. He knew he had two options. He could let anger and sadness consume him, or he could respond in a way that demonstrated his character. He chose the latter. "Mrs. Mary," Michael said, his voice calm but firm, "I don't understand why you treat me this way. I'm as human as you are, with the same rights to be here and enjoy life. The color of my skin doesn't make me any less deserving than anyone else." Mary looked at him, surprised by the boy's serenity. She hadn't expected someone so young to speak with such maturity and dignity. However, her prejudices ran deep, and her face showed resistance to change. "Don't talk to me like that, boy. You don't know anything about life," Mary replied with a tone of superiority. But Michael was not intimidated. He remembered his mother's words and decided that instead of arguing, he would show Mary the strength of respect and kindness. "Perhaps I have much to learn, Mrs. Mary," Michael continued, "but I know that everyone deserves to be treated with respect. You could be my grandmother, and if that were the case, I'd like you to treat me with love, not contempt. It doesn't matter how old we are or where we come from. We all have something to teach and something to learn." The baker, who had been watching silently, couldn't help but smile at Michael's maturity. He decided to step in to support the young man. "Mary," Mr. Charles said gently, "Michael is a regular customer here. He has always been respectful and kind. I think it's time we all learn to see beyond appearances and treat others with the respect they deserve." Mary, who had always believed she was right about everything, felt a pang of doubt for the first time in a long while. There was something in the way Michael and Mr. Charles spoke that made her reflect. She remembered her own son, Thomas, who had passed away years ago in a car accident. Thomas had been a kind-hearted young man, always willing to help others, regardless of their race or social class. The memory of her son began to soften the hardness that had grown in her heart over time. For a long moment, Mary remained silent, lost in her thoughts. Finally, she looked up and met Michael's eyes, something she hadn't done since she entered the bakery. "You're right, boy," Mary said, her voice trembling. "I've let my pain and my prejudices make me forget what really matters. Thomas, my son, always said everyone deserves a chance, and I had forgotten that. I apologize for what I said to you." Michael, with his noble heart, smiled warmly. "Thank you, Mrs. Mary. I accept your apology. We all make mistakes, but the important thing is to learn from them and grow." The atmosphere in the bakery changed immediately. Mr. Charles, relieved, handed Michael his sweet bread without charging him. "This is for your good heart, Michael. I'm proud of you." Mary, still processing what had just happened, was moved by Michael's generosity and the baker's support. From that day on, she resolved to change. She began treating others with more kindness and questioning her own prejudices. Gradually, Mary and Michael developed a relationship of respect and friendship. Every time they met in town, Mary would smile at him and ask how he was doing. Sometimes, they would even sit together in the town square and talk about life, about how people can change, and about how love and respect are the true forces that unite humanity. In the small town of Harmony, the story of Michael and Mary became an example of how an open heart can transform even the most closed-off people. The townsfolk learned that beyond the color of one's skin or superficial differences, we are all human beings with the capacity to love, forgive, and change. And so, Michael continued his journey in life, knowing that with patience and kindness, he had managed to change a heart and, in doing so, had left a lasting mark on his community. Harmony became a more united place, where people began to see beyond appearances and value each person for their humanity. Because, in the end, we are all responsible for making the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time.